So I'm guessing this is gonna be a bit longer video, but it's right that it is because this needs to be talked about. This is the first chapter in my series on my past or my youth's nihilistic attitude, and it's called Chapter 1, Alcohol. Alcohol is the most widely accepted drug. There are many people who don't smoke, even more who don't smoke weed or do coke or heroin. But alcohol? Well, everybody drinks, surely. Who doesn't drink once in a while? And who doesn't drink excessively when young? What are you, a fucking pussy? That's how it began for me. Back in high school, I wasn't really the most social kid. In fact, I was one of the last in my class to make friends. But despite my shyness, I was always eager to climb to the top of the social ladder. Once I did, though, I had a good perspective about what makes high school social groups so special, and which ones are at the top of the ladder and which ones are at the bottom. Uh, what is the main difference between people of, let's say, a group of nerds and people in a group of stoners? Well, stoners are higher on the social ladder in high school, at least, than nerds, because stoners go out and they go to parties and they socialize and they connect with people, and nerds don't, unless they're metalheads. But see, metalheads only go to concerts that play their obscure versions of music that nobody else likes, and they only drink beer. They're not as extreme as, those that are actually at the top of this hierarchy. And I was clearly not a metalhead, but I also wasn't going to be a nerd because I just wasn't a nerd. My grades were poor, even though I was fairly bright. I was just too lazy to care. I was a true INTP on the MBTI scale. So I've decided to be one of the popular kids. It didn't take much to be one anyway. You just had to hang out with them, go out on a Friday night, and as long as you accepted them as your superiors, made them laugh, etc., you were accepted. And that's how, at the age of 16, I first went out with the sole intention of hanging out while drinking alcohol. So, before I continue the story, it's important that I talk a bit about drinking culture in my country of Slovenia and why it's so important for young people to be familiar with alcohol at an early age. Um, Slovenia is a small country, but it has a proud and old drinking tradition. If you look at statistics, Slovenes are almost always consistently at the very top of nations that drink excessively. The World Health Organization's 2010 pure alcohol consumption among persons aged 15 or more in liters per capita actually ranks Slovenia as 24th. And even then, it needs to be pointed out that Slovenes drank more wine and beer than a lot of countries above. Just they drank less spirits. In 2015, World Health Organization did a research for OECD, and this one put Slovenia in 13th place amongst the 33 member states. And as you know, most of the OECD member states are from Europe. Last year's domestic research actually showed that an average Slovene drank 11.5 liters of pure alcohol, which is a lot even in European context, and Europe in general drinks twice as much alcohol as any other continent. So yeah, in Slovenia it's important to be a drinker. Drinking is an integral part of any social event. It is one of those, Eastern European societies that you only experience on the movie screens. You know the one. The kind of society in which when you attend a party of any sorts, from a baby shower to a rave at a nightclub, you're expected to drink alcohol. It's mandatory. You know, you realize that once you stop, of course. People here don't like you not drinking with them. It makes them uneasy. It, it makes them nervous. It makes them feel like you cannot be trusted. And in a way, they're right. It's also true that if you don't drink while socializing, you won't really get much out of that event. You know, unless there are designated drivers you can converse with. Since everyone else is drunk out of their minds and only they are capable to be on the same wavelength, you're out of it. So unless you find some other people who don't drink, and the only other people who don't drink are designated drivers, you won't have much fun. And one other thing that needs to be pointed out is that, well, designated drivers are a rare breed here, because Slovenia is also a cemetery filled with graves of drunk drivers and their victims. There's consistently around 15,000 traffic accidents per year, and that's actually really shocking for a country of 2 million. Drinking while driving is one of the most popular ways of dying on the road. It's almost a national sport, really. But I digress. The point is, drinking is important, and as a teenager, I soon began to realize this. When you're young, you don't feel consequences of excessive drinking. You barely feel any hangover. You barely feel bad about doing it. It's just something that's almost natural. You're going to go out. You're gonna get drunk. You'll maybe puke. You may fall into an alcohol-induced coma and wake up remembering only bits and pieces. But, even though that sounds really bad, back then it just didn't feel like it's bad. It was just a form of socializing outside of school. In fact, it was the only such form of socializing. There was no point in hanging out with friends without drinking, at least with friends that mattered due to their high status. Excuse me. And that's basically the main problem. The main problem of why youth drink so much is because alcohol is seen as the top of the social ladder. The more you drink, the more you party, and the more you party, well, the higher you get. I had a group of friends that didn't drink alcohol, that were able to just hang out and drink coffee and talk and smoke cigarettes. And I became a regular in that group after high school, after all the socializing I've done. And these people did actually encourage me to drop drinking, to drop excessive partying that's very popular in college. I even got the talk out of them about my drinking, and I realize now why it was important to have that talk. You see, I was never really a moderate drinker. Once I started drinking, I usually didn't stop. That habit came out of my, general habit to not be able to say no to things. I rarely said no to things in my younger years. And same went for alcohol. As long as there was any, I was gonna drink it, which, made me into a horrible drunk that was unable to cope with his drinking habits. And that actually didn't really change once I came to college. In high school, things were easy because we were all drinking a lot, and we were all teenagers with bodies made out of stone that could take any alcohol and just sort of make it disappear without too much consequence. But once I've hit my early 20s and I got to college, things got a bit different. In college, most people drank beer, and beer is very painful to feel after a night out. It is one of the worst forms of drinks in terms of hangovers. It produces really painful hangovers. But the hangovers were just one aspect of it. I think the worst aspect of drinking in college was the regret I felt afterwards. Because you see, in high school, social groups are very tight, very closed, and even if you do something embarrassing on a night out, nobody really cares because you're all just dumb teenagers who don't know what's good and what's bad. But in college, you're sort of already asked to, well, take take care of your social status. Your friends are not really reliable. The whole social group dynamic is really weird because you never know which people are gonna drop out, which people are coming in, and there's no such thing as consistent friendships in college. So you do have to, well, be more graceful. You need to be more normal to fit in. Even in a liberal arts college such as mine, you also have to remember that a lot of these people you're studying with could one day be your superiors. You are sharing the same interests, you're sharing the same studies. So it is important to keep a high profile, but not one that's too high, both in terms of drugs or other terms, hierarchical terms, so to speak. So, in a sense, college was pretty much the death of my drinking because, well, first off, it cost a lot of money to drink excessively. And once you're on your own and not really dependent on parents' money, and once you're not only going out to buy some cheap wine that you're gonna drink with your cheap orange soda, but you're actually gonna go to a bar to get drunk, well, things get a bit more expensive. So I wasted a lot of money on drinking. And I've had friends that once I stopped drinking, actually I didn't really get along with anymore. Precisely because all we did together was we went out and we drank. Once that was over, we just had nothing else in common. Same goes for my buddies in high school. The only people I still meet with are the coffee drinkers. Those people that I hanged out with in high school just to go out and get drunk or get high. Well, those people aren't really in my life anymore. And this is how you realize that alcohol really doesn't do a lot for you. People say all the time, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna celebrate by drinking, or you know what, I'm just gonna drown my sadness by drinking. But I think deep down inside we all know that drinking will not solve the problems, and the drinking is not a good substitute for celebration. Drinking shouldn't even be a habit when it comes to celebration, and yet here it is. If you've got a birthday, you're gonna buy tons of alcohol, get everyone drunk. If you fail an exam, you're just gonna take everyone that also failed an exam with you to a bar and get drunk and despair a little bit while having a laugh. And it's not a good way to live. I think out of all the sad drinking experiences I've had, the ones where I had an opportunity to hook up with girls were the worst, because I could start a conversation with a girl and she would be interested, but as time passed and I drank more, I became completely unable to continue conversation or to continue actually trying to score. And she would just leave. She would just find someone else to talk to. I was just too drunk to act as a normal human male. So I think that's the more feminizing aspect of drinking than the whole idea that beer produces estrogen. That's not the problem. The problem is excessive use of it. And that's what I did. I was an excessive user. I've puked a couple of times, but I never really blacked out. There was never a point where I would just wake up and not remember what happened the past night. That really didn't happen. I always knew what happened. My memory was extremely well, my memory was pretty good. So I would always wake up and I would know exactly what I did and I would just feel ashamed. So even not blacking out for me was an extremely bad experience. And blacking out would of course be even worse, because then I would know that I do have a real problem. Perhaps that would be a good thing. Perhaps that would make me quit sooner. In any case, that's how I managed to quit alcohol. I went to a college party that ended with me waking up at home, dressed but soaked in water and in sand, on my bed, not remembering anything that happened. My wallet gone, all my other stuff gone, my phone gone. No idea how I came home, no idea what I did, just waking up there. I went to Facebook. I contacted a friend, or someone I thought was my friend that was also at the party, and I asked him what happened to my stuff, and he just didn't respond. He said he didn't have any time to check what happened. That's how I realized that people you drink with aren't necessarily your friends, they're just people you drink with. In any case, I never really found out what happened. I did get my wallet back. It was at my doorstep in the afternoon. Someone must have dropped it off, but it had no money in it, just my ID, my documents, my cards. So whoever dropped it, yeah, sure, I should be a bit grateful, even though I got robbed. But it was my fault that I got robbed. I should never even be in a situation where I drink so much that I, black out. And naturally, it wasn't just alcohol. Back then, I was really nervous. I had a period of panic attacks and anxiety. And we're going to talk about that as well. But for now, let's just say that the combination of anxiety and panic attacks with drinking excessive alcohol will cause blackouts. It will most definitely cause blackouts. And those blackouts aren't fun, because even though you may wake up in the morning without really much of the hangover, you don't know what happened. You have no idea what you did. And I realized that later when one of these so-called friends I've had told me that I've been, sexually very open to a couple of girls at the party, which made me extremely embarrassed. Because again, I had no idea what I did. I had no idea why I would do something like that. Well, deep down inside I did knew I was probably really, in need of some love or whatever. But just the scary thought of not knowing what I talked about, or how I expressed my feelings, or what drove me to my behavior, or what sort of secrets about myself I revealed to these strangers. Just not knowing that really scared me. It just threw me off the alcohol wagon for good. I've decided then and there to just stop drinking. And that's how I stopped drinking for good. Well, I do occasionally drink a radler, aka a shandy, which is around 2% alcohol, but I only do that if I'm in company of drinkers. Otherwise, I tend to excuse myself from a party early and then go home and do something productive. Excessive drinking really did damage to my self-esteem and especially to my behavior. I am extremely embarrassed of my past behavior. I don't really want to think about it a lot, but I have to. I have to keep reminding myself of what an idiot I was, and hope the memories stay with me forever, so that I may never stray from the path of sober life again. There's nothing wrong with a glass of wine here and then. Hell, it might even be healthy. But the drinking culture doesn't prescribe you only drink a glass of wine every now and then. It glorifies binge drinking. It makes you think like it's not a vice, but a way to clear your head, a way to solve your problems. Like it's a legitimate form of, well, harmful behavior, so to speak. Every sitcom ever taught you that. Tons of movies, starting with one of the most popular comedies of all time, The Hangover, gave out that sort of a vibe, despite being about consequences of excessive drinking. In fact, The Hangover was extremely harmful because it made the consequences of drinking seem funny, cool even. But they're not. They're not. And you only realize that once consequences of drinking come and hit you on the head. But by then, if you've been an excessive drinker for years, it may not be enough to save you. And that's how people become alcoholics. That's how alcoholism gets born. That's why, out of my fellow countrymen, the people that are usually the biggest alcoholics are also those that are just over-socialized. And that's tragic. It really is. And another aspect of alcohol is the fact that it accompanies this nihilism, this fatalism. It accompanies the sort of thoughts that I used to have as a young person. The thoughts of, it's all just wasted. There is no hope. And we really need to live in the moment. I'll talk about this whole live in the moment thing later. But that's also a big problem with my generation and generations to come. In any case, out of all addictions, alcohol addiction, at least for me, is probably the worst overall. Because alcohol makes you violent, depressed, pathetic, sad, angry, all at the same time. And immediately, after that short period of joy that you're seeking by engaging in this habit. I've known people whose families were destroyed for good because of alcohol. Stable, good families that also hurt their children. Families that made the children stray from path of righteousness as a result. It's so incredibly tragic. It's so sad. And I feel nothing but content for people that normalize this behavior. For me, there's no reason why there can be a cool alcohol commercial on the telly. Like commercial for Heineken or Carlsberg or whatever. While cigarette commercials are banned. A father who's a smoker is way less likely to abandon his family and act in violent and hostile manner to his poor children than a father that drinks. And yet tobacco is considered a worse problem than drinking. That's disgraceful. It's almost as disgraceful as hearing casual drinkers defending their fucking habit. Of course, drinking in moderation is not a problem, but who said it's going to be in moderation anyway? Young people that go out in the evening with the intention of not drinking in moderation are the real testament that something's wrong with the society we live in. And I was one of those young people, and many of my friends still are. I will pray for them, and I will pray that one day society learns to be moderate about alcohol. Till then though, amikai, amiki, thank you for watching.